All right, so today we will be looking at simplifying fractions. Now, last class we kind of talked about how to name fractions. So if I were to have a fraction like 2 over 4, I could say 2 divided by 4, I could say 2 over 4, or I can say 2 fourths. And we also talked about how we might graph these fractions. We can use a bar model or a pie model or a cookie model. So I'm going to go ahead and draw these out so you can see what it might look like again. Because we have the 4 in the, we said this again, is the denominator, we're going to break it up into 4 pieces. And same thing with the bar model. So both would work if I'm using a pie or a bar model. I'm breaking it into a total of 1, 2, 3, and 4 pieces. Now I want to know what part of these 4 pieces do I have. We can find that out by looking at the numerator. So at the numerator, we see I have 2 pieces. So I have this piece here and this piece here. Okay, I don't know why it keeps doing that. And the same thing applies over here. I have 2 pieces. Sorry, 1 piece there, 1 piece there, and 1 piece, 1 piece. So that makes 2 pieces in total. Well, today we're going to learn how to actually simplify these fractions because this is not normally how we would look at it. So a way to think about simplifying fractions is to look at the entire piece itself. And so we have the 4 small pieces in this area here and the 4 pieces over here. But it looks like something familiar. If I were to redraw this picture, and I just colored that in, I'm just curious, how much of that do I have? Well, we can see what I've done is I've split up these pieces. But if I remove that middle section, if I decide to remove that middle section, it all of a sudden looks a little bit like something else. So although these are similar, there's a different name for these fractions. Over here, how many pieces can you count on the right-hand side? Okay, hopefully you said 2, because we can see there are 2 pieces. Now, how many pieces do I have? Well, I have 1 piece, the one that's being colored in here. And the same thing is true if I'm using the bar model. And what we're learning is actually these 2 fractions are what we say equivalent or equal. So these 2 fractions are equivalent. Okay. And why is that? Well, we can see visually that that is the case. But how do we get from the 2 all the way down to the 1, and how do we get from the 4 all the way down to the 2? Well, a way to think about equivalent fractions is whatever you do to the numerator, you have to do to the denominator. So notice here, I had to go from 2 to 1 and 4 to 2. Whenever we use equivalent fractions, we'll always be using something called multiplication or division. In this case, we see it got smaller, so we in fact divided the values, both the numerator and the denominator, by 2. We'll learn more about multiplying and dividing later on, but for now we can think of it as looking at the picture and redrawing it out. Let's do another example together, just so that we feel a little bit more confident with it. Let's say I were to give you a fraction of 3 over 6. Okay, 3 over 6. Again, I can draw a picture to help me represent this amount. Okay, and I'm going to color in the values that I have. So I'm going to color in 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. And again, we can see how much of this cookie or pie do I have and how much of this bar do I have. And it looks to be 1, parts of it, so we can redraw this and just color in what we see. And it looks to be that I have one piece out of two pieces again. How did that work out? Well, again, we'll talk about this in the future, but notice that we divided this time by a different value. How did I go from 3 to 1 and 6 to 2? Well, it got smaller. And by how much? Well, it got smaller by 3, the value of 3. Not all answers will work out to be 1/2, so we can think of other examples as well. Let's do one last example just to make sure we have it down. So I'm going to go with 4 and 6. Again, I can draw a pie, and I can break it up into 6 pieces. And this time I want to see how many pieces I have. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. And looking at this looks a little bit strange. And so if I were to redraw this shape, oops, I should probably do it in black. If I were to redraw this shape and I were to color in this amount that I have, it looks like a different value. Well, remember that we want to break it up into the same number of sections. So if I were to break this up into the same values, so let's say here and here, well, I want to make it look similar. I'd have to break it up one more piece. And all of a sudden, we have 3 similar pieces. So we know in our denominator, we should have a 3. And how many pieces do I have this time? Well, I had 2. And so again, we can see, oh, there's a value that has changed. How did the 4 become a 2? Well, we divided that by 2. Whatever we do to the numerator, we do to the denominator, and we divide that by 2. And so this is a way we simplify fractions. You will need to know your multiplication tables, and you'll need to know how to divide. But if not, you can always draw a picture as a way to represent, and remember the pieces are all the same size. Practice with the class examples, and make sure you're bringing questions to class. We'll see you soon.